Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time for GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And it's with great honor. I must say, I've gone through a lot of CV resumes in my time, but I've never seen anyone quite like Bill Owens. From going from North Dakota, Bismarck, to four-star admiral, living in Hong Kong and Beijing and Sixth Fleet, Oxford, George Washington. I mean, it's a Rough Rider. I mean, just an incredible background. And I'm very honored, Bill, to have you on the show today. It's a number two person in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I believe, in the Clinton White House. So it's with great honor to have you here today. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, such a pleasure to be with you, Gary.
So I got a question. So you're from Bismarck, and when you graduated in about 1958, and you go, what's a journey like? You go to the Naval Academy, you go up to be a four-star admiral. And I got to tell you, but when I was a kid, I dreamed of being an admiral. Seriously, I thought that was the coolest opportunity, the coolest thing to have is to be an admiral. What's it like in terms of how do you decide I'm going to go in the U.S. Naval Academy? And at one point, did you say, I want to be an admiral? How does that work?
Well, life is a blessing, Gary. And so I was a really poor kid in Bismarck, North Dakota. My dad worked on farms. I could see no future. No one had ever gone to college before. We lived in a trailer house in Bismarck, which put us pretty low in the economic structure. And I was looking for a way to frankly get out of there. And there was a television show on called The Men of Annapolis. And these guys had white uniforms and swords. And I couldn't imagine what that was like. And so I said to my dad, how do you go to that place? And he said, well, I think there's something to do with the congressman or senators from North Dakota. And so I went to see one of them, a guy named Quentin Burdick. And I said, sir, I'd like to go to that place, the Naval Academy. And he said, why, sure, son. No one has ever asked me that before. And about 6 weeks later, I was on a train back to Annapolis. I had never been out of the state of North Dakota. When the train went through Minneapolis, I saw my first African American. It was the beginning of a great life and great opportunities, and I never had to look back. And the panorama just opened for me thanks to God's good graces, and then you just go along for the ride, And so it was a great journey, and I wouldn't take back any of it.
Now, how is it? I mean, it's fascinating me. You're the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Sixth Fleet. How is it commanding that many people? What is it the secret? If you say there's one secret to commanding people and having the respect, what is it? How does that work?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of heart in all of that, Gary. I'll just tell you one story, and that was when the Sixth Fleet is the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, the Red Sea, and I was there at the time of Desert Storm, the first Gulf War. George Bush Sr., George Bush 41 was the president. We all had a huge amount of respect for him, and I think what it's about is, do you in your heart, do you really have a soul for those guys and girls who are out there in your command? And you realize it at some times along the way that some don't and some do. And the night before the first Desert Storm, we had 6 aircraft carriers and lots of ships in the Sixth Fleet. And I spent the day before flying among the 6 aircraft carriers, and I went to see every ready room with all the young pilots. We thought we were going to lose about 10% of them the next day. We thought we hadn't been at war since Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know how that was going to be. And I'll tell you, I mean, I was in tears most of the time. I'd go and visit a ready room, and my son was in the Navy, and I could picture him in the same situation. And at the end of every one of those briefings, you just hug these guys. I mean, literally, Gary, you hug them and you tell them, America is going to be here for you. If something happens to you on this flight, we're going to come and get you. And they know how sincere you are when you're talking to them. And I think that sincerity with the people, is really everything in a company too. In a large company, a small company, it's the blessing of life when you've got that family feeling, no matter how large the organization is. And so we've seen that in American business, in large companies. We saw it with, I don't know, Alan Mulally at Ford had that same feeling. And those CEOs who are passionate about their people, doesn't take long for the word to get around, and it's a big part of your success. And everybody knows that you give a damn, and I think that's an important part of it.
Oh, I love that. So give a damn. That's it. So we like get shit done and give a damn. I love that. That's what it's all about. So, so you went to Nortel, right? So you were the CEO, president, and vice chairman of Nortel. Then you were on the board of Daimler. I mean, it's actually a lot of boards, actually. And you're currently on the board of Wipro. So how's that? I mean, so you have all this, you care about people. Now you come onto a board. So what's it like to be on a board of a Daimler or a Nortel and to be this? What's it like? What can you transfer those skills that you had as an admiral? Do you come into the boardroom and is it the same exact skill set, or do you have to tweak it a bit once you come into a commercial organization?
Well, you have to keep reminding yourself that you're not the CEO. And that's always hard for board members. They all want to be the CEO. And so, I think, though, the compassion is fairly obvious, especially if you get to be chairman of one of these companies. And I've been blessed to be chairman of a couple of large companies. That there you can genuinely show the compassion for the management team, the respect for them, calling a spade when they're not doing their work. But governance is at the heart of it, not management. And so how do you govern? Because you got to keep reminding yourself you're there for those shareholders. And my view is that frequently we forget that. We are there for those shareholders. We're not there to manage the company. We're not there to help manage the company. We're there to do the best job we can in governing the company to make sure it's honest, it's straightforward. And of course, we found that at Nortel when I became CEO, the issue really was the books were corrupted by the previous CEO, and he was let go. And so how do you, I suspect that part of the reason they made me the CEO was because I was old and gray and supposedly honorable. And so how do you as a board member function to make sure that the shareholders' interests are honestly taken care of and that the rules are being followed? Because sometimes I think when we make investments in large companies, we don't really look at the board. We should look at the board a little bit more, because if they are trustworthy, it's a big part of your decision to make an investment.
So, okay, going down through, I looked at, you have an honor, the French Legion of Honor. So talk about honorable, right? How does that come about?
Yeah, well, it was as a result of that first Desert Storm War. And, in all honesty, I hope we don't have many Frenchmen listening, but the French had a couple of aircraft carriers, and they have a good military. They've used it mostly in Africa over the years, but they wanted to be involved in the Desert Storm operation like the Brits were and others. And the entity that has naturally been the core of making all that happen is the United States. And it turns out to be, usually in the case of the Navy, the two fighting fleets, the Sixth Fleet, which is in the Mediterranean, and the Seventh, which is in Yokosuka, Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And so those fleets have tended to be the ones where the allies come together. And, in all honesty, the Sixth Fleet would organize the intelligence. We would make sure that all the elements of the fighting force were protected, the French, the British, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved having them there, but we had to we had to look out for them a lot and make sure they were safe, and they loved that. And we did that with great spirit. I think America has always done that with great spirit. I hope we regain that spirit with President Biden. We put our arms around the allies. We were great friends. We made them successful. They knew we were part of making them successful. And it was a big part of the American belief, the American system, and the American alliance. And so it was for all of that and the work we put into making the French successful in Desert Storm, which they were.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's got to be something else. I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like being in war. It's like, it's just got to be. I mean, do you get nervous, or are you focused, or is it a lot of the above? I mean, how does it feel?
Yeah, it feels really emotional. I think a president would probably feel the same way, except you're there with the troops. And I had been with the troops in Vietnam. I've been with the troops along the way with thousands of hours, many years underwater in a submarine. And you just have this feeling for these guys and girls. And you're going to send them off and get shot at, and some of them are not going to be alive tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And, Gary, I've been blessed in my life to know a lot of great people like the Prime Minister of Israel, Rabin.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought this was one of the great men in the world. And he said, and I'll always remember, I have his specific quote, which I always carried in my pocket, which talked about when the night before the conflict, and you're going to, of course, he was speaking as a prime minister. I was not a prime minister. But that tomorrow night there will be a lot of mothers who will be without their sons or daughters because they lost their lives today. And you think about it all the time, and you pray about it, and I think he said you hug them when you can. And and on the one hand, it's a fairly ominous responsibility. On the other hand, what a great blessing, to be with these people who feel that way, people who give a damn about doing the right things, and then having a chance to influence the right things to be done. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, in my view, don't influence the right things to be done, and they could and should.
No, I remember a number of years ago, there was a CEO of a company called the Digital Equipment Corporation, Ken Olson. He used to always say, "Do the right thing," and I worked for them for a number of years. And early in my career, I wanted some corporate training, and he said, "Do the right thing," and I'll never forget that. That was like, if you talk about America, right, the values that we've had in America, and I think we got a little off track for a while, but do the right thing and try to be fair and just. I mean, people. I was on a call earlier today with some folks from India, Bill, and they said, "What happened to the U.S.?" And we were talking about some of the, and I'm not a political person per se, but like, what happened, right, in terms of how can these things happen in the U.S., down in Washington? I mean, that has not, it's kind of unprecedented, right? From, I guess in the 1800s it happened one time, but it's kind of strange how we got a little off track. And, I'm hope the goodness of America that we come back, because we have in the past, but, I guess we get a little off kilter once in a while.
I'm so with you in that belief, and I spend a little of my time in with several great men who are devoted to the democracy and everything that it's brought to us. And I don't know how we talk to our children about what that means, but unless you've seen, I've had not the opportunity, but I've been in the dumps of Calcutta, where people live there for decades and don't have any blessings of life except themselves. And you come away from that saying, it's not about my money. It's not about my place in my name. It's about what can I do? And so I think all of us need to ask that question. We live in this blessed country and we need to realize it. And what can we do to maintain it? And what can we do for those people out there who genuinely are struggling? And there's lots of opportunities to help. Gary, it brings up the whole area of corporate social responsibility. Mm-hmm. One of the great things about Indian companies, as you probably know, is that the large ones are required by Indian law to put, I think, 2.5% of their profits into projects and opportunities that are good for the people, for mm-hmm. not the people of the company, but the people of the country. Mm-hmm. In the United States, they do that as well. So Wipro is a large company that does systems integration, and they're very smart, compete with Accenture. And they take it very seriously what they do for their communities. And they've been doing that for years. And so maybe it's a time to just mention that, I think sometimes it's worthwhile thinking about who are our 5 heroes who are still alive today. Mm-hmm. We tend to think of Americans. I think of my global blessing of experience, and I look at guys like the founder of Wipro, a guy named Azim Premji, who has given billions of dollars of his own money to help the poor of India. Mm-hmm. and other parts of the world as well. And I ask myself, am I as good a man as Azim Premji is? And so if you go to South Asia and you mention that name, everyone will know who you're talking about. However, we in the United States probably don't know Azim's name very well. We should. So I think there are those examples out there that really do set a stage for all of us.
Do goodness. I know when we were talking in the green room, we spoke about, lived in Hong Kong and Beijing. And, I've had several conversations with folks about China very soon is going to eclipse the U.S. in terms of economic power. And so I just wanted to get, I think in terms of the innovation in the U.S. akin to Israel being the startup nation, that we can innovate. We're smart. We got people from all over the world. We're culturally diverse. We can do a lot of things that just aren't able to be done in a lot of places. What do you think? What's the future in terms of the U.S. and how do we adapt to these changes that are going to take place in the very near term?
Yeah, it is one of the 2 most important questions of our age, I think, Gary. And, we are not used to being the number 2 country economically, but we will be soon. China will clearly have the greatest GDP, gross domestic product, in the world. And today they have more buying power with their gross domestic product than we have. And so, if we look at just the military, for example, where I've spent a lot of my life, we spend $750 billion a year on our military. The Chinese spend, by some estimates, 180 billion. By other estimates, it could be as much as 350 billion. But we spend 750 billion. Mm-hmm. And you have to wonder, what is going on? Is the military industrial complex too strong? Is it alive and well? I can tell you it is. Mm-hmm. need defense reform. I can tell you we do. And are we spending too much money on the military? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of questions we have to answer in government about what is happening with defense spending. China has a long ways to go. I think the world's problems, whether they're pollution or terrorism or finding solutions for North Korea, or finding solutions for the pandemic, I think this is only going to be done in the long term with China as a partner. Now, do I admire what they do to the Uyghurs or to do I admire their freedom of speech? No. Also, we have to think about China. They have made more people better off in a 50-year period than any society in the history of man. And I can tell you from knowing them fairly well that they would love to engage with the United States, and there's a solution for every one of these problems. And to get the innovation of places like Hangzhou, which is the Silicon Valley of China, or Shenzhen, together with our Silicon Valleys, could change the world and could make us all better off, both economically and otherwise. So I feel strongly about this, and I wrote a book, Gary, called there it is,
China U.S. 2039, the end game. Oh, I love that.
And it talks about what it will likely look like between us and China in 2039, and the macro policies we should undertake between us to make it optimal. It's not particularly popular. It talks about a free trade zone between the United States and China, which I believe is a very good idea, and many other ideas that many people won't like. But it's from the heart. I think I know that it's true, and I think we need to really get to know the Chinese well. We don't understand them. Their cultures are very different from ours, and the language difficulty is very hard for us. So we must find a way to go forward with them, and I pray that we can do so.
You know, you were saying that they spent $180 million. I just read recently that their naval fleet is approximately the size of the U.S. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes, Gary, I think we misunderstand. It's not the total number of ships. It's because ships are just targets. And if you have the IT, if you have the systems of systems, the surveillance systems, I'll try to make this very short, but when I was a senior in the military, I was very keen on the revolution in military affairs, which was meant to say the United States has an ability to see a very large battlefield, maybe the size of Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
You can see that battlefield in great detail, every tank, every troop, every vehicle, every ship and airplane, and the enemy can't, then essentially you win. And so the integration of all those systems means that all of those things are just targets. And then you put precision weapons on each of those targets and you will win. We learned this from the ancient Chinese philosopher Sun Tzu, who wrote about war, and he's been quoted in business journals also. And so I believe that. I also believe, and I talk about it a little bit in this book, that we enter a new world now of mutual assured deterrence, except now it is that we have this ability that I just described to see a very large battlefield, and so do the Chinese pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
They, their satellites, with their UAVs, with their other capabilities to put together an integrated picture of a battlefield. And if you are two leaders and you both have the same picture of a battlefield, you're tempted to pull the trigger. And
Mm-hmm.
if you pull the trigger first, the other guy is going to be dramatically disadvantaged. He won't have communications. He won't have the ability to see the battlefield at all. And so, which one pulls the trigger first? That's much more important, perhaps, than who uses a nuclear weapon, which has far
Wow,
less.
that's amazing. I've never. So whoever pulls the trigger first wins.
I think that's coming. I think in the next 10 years, we are, because of what we've done in Silicon Valley, because of what we've done with AI and quantum sciences, because of where we're going, and the ability of the militaries, which are very, very technical. We don't hear too much about that. We hear about numbers of ships and airplanes, but it's not that. It's about the smartness. It's about the ability to integrate a picture of a battlefield. And so I think it's a very interesting discussion, Gary, and yet no one has picked up on the new mutual assured deterrence. And
Interesting. Wow. And what about, so you talk about quantum. What about quantum and AI?
so, I mean, it all fits together, doesn't it? I think China has devoted, as you know, China 2025, which is a policy. And we need to ask ourselves, why can't we put long-term policies in place like the Chinese? They'll put a policy in place that has real teeth behind it, that talks about 2035. We
Mm-hmm.
talk about some of those things, but we don't really put the programs behind them. We don't put the people behind them to make it happen. The Chinese do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about quantum, I mean, the Chinese have put billions of dollars into quantum sciences. And if you go to places like Shenzhen, which is just a little bit outside of Hong Kong, you can see dramatic things happening in the field of quantum sciences. And if we ask ourselves what the hell is going on with cyber, because we're all getting hit with cyber and they're stealing our money, and we don't hear much about it because banks are afraid to admit that they've just lost $1 billion here or there.
Mm-hmm.
The future of cyber, I think, is quantum cyber, the ability to look across an entire network, the network of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and shut it down before it happens to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that will only come with quantum cyber. And so I think, in some of the agencies, like National Security Agency, are probably working on some of that. But the Chinese are right in the middle of it, of course, in both an offensive capability, but also a defensive capability. And we need to get in front of things like cyber, a la quantum cyber,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise we're going to be struggling. And you know the story better than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I write a lot about quantum myself, so I see quantum as, it's critically important. The other thing is, Bill, we have so much out there. They say that just in the Milky Way galaxy, there's 6 billion Earth-like planets that are in the Goldilocks zone, estimated now. And I just had a conversation with one of the astronauts that there are about 200 trillion galaxies in the universe estimated. So there's a lot of stuff out there that we have not explored yet. And now that I just saw some, I don't know if this is real, but I've seen some naval videos recently on the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Program. But there's a lot of stuff out there that we don't know about, and I think we're going to start. You're laughing. I don't know. It's interesting for me, But
lot of time to talk about all that stuff, Gary. It's all out there, and
Well,
uh,
you should know you were there, right? But it's incredible. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know about, and I think we ought to start looking outward instead of inward. And if I'm from some other planet, and I come here, and I would say, what's going on with these people? They destroy themselves. They're attacking each other rather than trying to help, as you said, do the right thing and help each other get better. And it's really important that we evolve as a society to move in that direction to help, because we have a limited time on this planet. The planet's got a limited time. We're going to have to look to the stars. Why don't we start investing our time and money and spending 180 billion dollars on Navy as China, on the U.S. side, 750 billion. Why don't we start looking at how to explore other places and try to get to know people or
yeah,
things?
boy, I'm with you, Gary. I think to be able to restructure and think about the right things and be able to prioritize is so important. And I think in a lot of these cases, we have to ask ourselves, are we here just for ourselves, or are we doing things that affect our children?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's happening really fast. I mean, I don't have to tell you. I mean, I've watched some of your shows, and you're talking about the future and what's going to happen, and it's going to be really different in 20 years. I mean, this whole relationship with China, it's going to be really different. China is going to be a really different place in 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and so are we. And yet we want to maintain the goodness of America. We want to be fighting for America. However, we want to do it in the spirit of being there for our kids. And I think whenever we make some of these decisions, we need to think about what's this going to do to my 18-year-old grandson when I take this action. And I think we frequently think about how much money is going to go in our pocket or how much fame is going to come to me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we need to think about what's this all mean for our kids and our grandchildren. So
No, I agree with you 100%. And I really, Bill, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And so I have a lot of startups from all over the world. I have investors from literally all parts of the world that tune into my show. And what kind of a parting advice would you have with startups that are, we have a lot of AI and quantum startups. What kind of advice would you have for them in terms of, we have startups from Africa, Indonesia, Australia, Germany, all over South America. What kind of advice would you have for them in terms of the future and what to focus on? And also with investors, what do you think they should be focusing on today?
yeah, it's a long subject, Gary. I'm in a bunch of startups myself and spend a lot of time with this. We have one of our little startups is Red Bison Technology Group, which I won't bore you with here right now, but it means to bring fiber-like bandwidth everywhere in the rural areas and effective bandwidth into big buildings, et cetera. And 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 yet we need to find ways to genuinely make these little companies come alive. And there's a lot of mistakes people make along the way. We have a ball cap on the back. On the front it says Red Bison. On the back it says DDBWA. And I'm not sure I can mention this on your show, but that stands for Don't Do Business with Assholes.
Mhm.
And I think that's a good starter. Thank
I
you.
mean, we're pretty open on my show. It's we get shit done, Venture Studios, so it's okay with us.
So I think that's really important. Make sure that
Mhm.
people you're with are really good that you have, and the
Mhm.
same with the board. I also recommend a fiduciary independent board for small companies. Choose the people wisely
Mhm.
and and then bring them on and use their wisdom. And if they'll invest a small amount in your company to show their seriousness, that's great. I guess the other things I would say is try to stay away as long as you can from too much preferred stock and too much debt, and
Mhm.
try to grow it until you're sure you've got the idea. And if it looks like your idea is not right, then don't hesitate to shift horses a little bit along the way.
Mm-hmm.
All of the stuff is changing rapidly, and as you learn, you need to be able to change and keep the company alive while you're doing it. So I can go on and on with this, Gary. I'm sure you don't have the time to do that, but I think that, having some wise people around is really important. Somebody who has seen it and done it and is going to be there by your side no matter what, whether they're board members or whether they're senior advisors or whatever, because most youngsters haven't seen. I mean, I love them. They've got great ideas. They've got great innovation, and sometimes they hit it big, but sometimes they flame out very fast. And I've seen too many of them when the idea was really good.
I agree. I'd love to have you on the show again sometime if you would like to do it. It would be great to have you on. There's a lot of discussion points. Well, I want to say thank you very much for we're at the top of the hour. Thank you very much for joining my show today. And again, thanks for your service and all the great things that you've given the world. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. Fowler, thanks for doing a good job with what you're doing there.
Thank you, sir. Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Peter Plaut.
Gary.
Hey, we're online. We're alive.
Well, I don't know how I can follow up after Admiral Bill Owens. All I could do is maybe answer the question, what can I do? What can we do to help fill his very large shoes as global citizens? That's all I could say, because big shoes to fill.
You yourself, you and I have had a lot of talks over it seems like years, doesn't it? It is years from last year.
It's years in Zoom chat.
It's years in Zoom chat. So tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of I know you do the Wimmer family office. You've been involved. You graduated from what? Rensselaer, correct?
Yeah, where the men were men and the women were men and the geeks were the superstars. I mean, it was computer science, engineering. They showed Revenge of the Nerds back then. I'm dating myself back to the 80s. Nobody laughed when they saw that. No,
I remember
that was all us.
End of the Nerds.
In the end, we all won, right?
Exactly. So in terms of so you've won awards, top 20 rising stars of hedge funds, during the great financial crisis. So what's the secret? So, from Rensselaer to where you are today, what's that journey like? I mean, here you're in London today. So, and you're with the Wimmer family office. What's a journey like going from Rensselaer to where you are today?
So I always look at the analogy of looking at that tip of that iceberg, right? You see the tip, everybody sees the success stories there, but they don't see the trials and tribulations that are significantly deep underneath. So I would say, a couple things. First of all, if you're successful, there's a hell of a lot of failures and a lot of challenges there, family-wise and personally. We don't have time on this show to go into, but I'd be happy to offline with you or some of your viewers. I also like to live my life by, the phrase success is determined by the individual. So what is success? Is that monetary rewards, or is that coming home and feeling blessed that you have a loving wife and lovely kids, and maybe your mom and dad still ring your phone because they're still alive? So, I look at success in terms of all the blessings that I've had, and particularly very humble in terms of the challenges that I've faced both professionally and personally. But going directly to your question, Gary, look, I was at an engineering school because my father was pounding the drum that, math and science can't do liberal arts. It was in Troy, New York. I mean, Rensselaer is one of the top engineering schools in the country and the oldest engineering school in the United States. But obviously, Troy is in the garden spot of the U.S. Not a lot of fun up there.
I grew up in Pennsylvania. I grew up in Williamsburg, Pennsylvania. You weren't that far away. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. I know what it's like.
Of course, I treated myself to London weather, so I got the London tan now. But hopefully I won't have skin cancer. But just going back to your question, though, Gary, just really briefly. Look, I started out in engineering school, computer science. I saw the movie Wall Street, the original one, back in the 80s, and I'm like, I don't want to be an engineer. And I had all these applications to Microsoft and Google. Well, Google wasn't existing at the time, but the ones like that, internet startups and stuff, Apple. And I decided I want to go on Wall Street because they make a lot of money. Probably should have stayed in technology and science because that was clearly the longer term view. But in terms of your question, look, started out in math and science because I was a bit different. So I had that math and science. I was able to get a job at JP Morgan and then leverage that into a job at Salomon Brothers. And then the rest is history. But I was on the view of research is everything because I come from a science and technology background. And so my analytical experience is really all that I could offer, nothing more. But the trials and tribulations I discuss is shortly after the advent of the internet, research was everywhere. Whereas in the past, you actually had to read financial statements, annual reports, and write about them. Now they're everywhere and in real time. And so had to reinvent myself away from being a research analyst to being another type of analyst to being a banker, and then eventually moving into a family office. So it has been a long and challenging road.
So how did you how did you get hooked up with Pear, and how did you decide to go into a family office? And what is a family office? Like, you hear it a lot. What exactly is a family office to their viewers?
Well, let's start with how did I get to join Pear Weimer, who was your guest just a little while ago on this show. And again, another difficult person to step into his shoes.
Thanks for helping with that.
Well,
I really appreciate it.
I mean, the man that is the only man that ever jumped out of a plane over Mount Everest, is a founding astronaut with Richard Branson on Virgin Galactic and all his other activities and philanthropic. So again, tough to fill into his shoes. So what is a family office? A family office is basically when you have incredible wealth, not just a little bit about wealth, but incredible amounts of wealth. You create a family office, which is basically.
Does somebody need to have to start a family?
I don't think there's a number to it, but I would probably say you want to start with at least 50, if not $100 million dollars or more, because what you're doing is you're creating an asset management firm, maybe an asset management firm and a merchant bank and an investment bank together. The whole point is to create a firm to manage this significant wealth, not just for yourself and your family, but multi-generational wealth. And the family office view is, how do we protect that multi-generational wealth, number one. Number two, when you talk about impact investing, as Admiral Owens was talking about, diversity, inclusion, ESG investing, how do you take all that and intertwine that into your investment philosophy as well? So it's all about wealth protection, wealth preservation, and in terms of a multi-generational thing, as well as giving back to humanity is very important. So I would say family offices over the next probably 10 to 20 years will rival some of the largest asset managers, pension funds, etc., in terms of the amount of wealth that is being managed by family offices. And they will have, and continue to do so, have a significant impact, not just in terms of financial markets, but also on impact investing as well.
So how do you get to, so there are a lot of incredible startups around the world. We focus on AI and quantum. So, and there's all this wealth. Where do you connect the dots? How do you get to those family offices? Because I know that they're interested in it because I talked to a few of them, right? But how do you get to those family offices? So let's say we're a startup that's in Australia. How do they get to find out? How do family offices find out about those companies? And are they interested in investing in those kind of companies?
Well, first of all, I think we got to start with a very simple philosophy. It's a family office, okay? You want to work with good people, and you want to trust your capital, multi-generational wealth, to people that are going to be good custodians of your wealth. So talk about a couple of things that Admiral Owens said. One of the things was, don't do business with assholes. That's my underlying philosophy. One of the reasons why I left the investment bank.
I love that because he didn't seem like a guy that would be saying that, but I loved it, actually. That is really cool. Really.
Look, I'm a New Yorker living in London, okay? Well, New York is filled with assholes. So the view to work with good people and entrust them with your capital. So, I mean, that's number one. There's number two is the name of your enterprise, GSD Ventures, get shit done. We don't have the time or luxury to work with a massive amount of people hoping that shit will get done. You have to do it yourself, whether that's going to the fax machine, which most of your viewers don't even know what a fax machine is anymore, but going to the scanner or et cetera, or doing a PowerPoint presentation. You have to do it all yourself. We have massive amounts of unlimited capital, but we have very limited bandwidth in terms of the human capital. So in terms of your question about how do you get to the families, it's relationships. Family offices tend to work with other family offices. And because you're dealing with protecting the wealth of families, and in many cases, who those families are, they're living and breathing it, you need to work with good people. So there's nothing like, and I try to, I have 6 kids, Gary. I have 3 boys, 3 girls. Relationships. It's dealing with good people that you can trust, and passing that on. You could download on the internet the top 100 family offices, and I think there's on LinkedIn, you can even buy it for $1,000 or something like that. Okay, go try calling into those family offices, see if they do
I
anything.
know it's possible because they got the gates. I understand
in a relationship. So
personal introduction to get it. I agree with you. But how do you do that? So how do they, okay, let's say there's a very, very hot AI company that's going to dominate a particular space. How does that come in front of? Because I know that I've spoken to a few of the family offices, and yourself and pair. So, but how do they get in front of them? Let's say in mass, they've got a cool technology. How do you find out about a company that could be interesting? So family offices, the Rockefeller or Rothschilds or whatever.
So, we were just mentioning the Rockefeller and Rothschild's family office. I think it's very important to be aligned with an investment bank. It doesn't have to be one of these large investment banks, small, mid-sized investment banks that have those relationships. In fact, I was just on the phone right before our call with a company called LionTree, which is founded by my dear friend R.E.A. Burkhoff, who I think is a pioneer in the telecom, media, and technology space, not just investment banking, but also investing there. And I was putting him in touch with another group, which I also introduced you to, called G Squared in Switzerland, that manages about $3 billion. And they're focused on technology. It's trying to align yourself with people in the know and adding value to them so that they add value to you. So again, it's trying to align yourself with those firms that have the access to those AI companies and others. So I know I'm speaking very opaquely, but it's really, if it's somebody speaking with you, it's me introducing you to another family, Gary. It's me introducing you to the LionTrees of the world and the G Squareds. Hopefully together, you guys develop a relationship based on trust and integrity, and you get to share some information. In terms of, I got this hot new stock, this hot new cryptocurrency, let's call up a family office. Not going to work. It's got to be, it's a much more longer term process built on trust.
Relationship driven, right? No, I agree.
And the other thing, Gary, is we're not paid like Goldman Sachs at the end of the year. How many deals did you close, right? So it's really about not that 12-month time frame. It's about the multi-generation. So, many times I could sit in my office here during lockdown, and I do from 7 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night in many cases, just showing different opportunities, whether that's from the technology side, satellite, telecommunications, real estate, metals and mining, etc. And I just listen and listen and listen. But at the end of the day, it's, which one do I get an interesting connection to? And I'm like, you know what? You need to meet Gary. And that's what I do, Gary. I put you right.
I mean, you're amazing. I got to tell you, Peter, you're amazing. And, it's interesting for me because over the last year, especially during the pandemic, I've met so many interesting folks. I mean, of course, being from Silicon Valley and having the privilege and humbled to have, a partner that's a billionaire has not hurt. That's for sure in terms of introductions. But the other thing is, they're just, people are just like us, right? They want to, I'm at the Polo Club right now. They want to ride their horses. They're equestrians. They're here for the winter and they're hanging out. And you'd be surprised who you see and get a chance to develop a relationship with. So I agree with you. It's, but it's kind of like a secret squirrel society, right? It's not so easy to go in. It's not like they're out there saying, hey, this is a Rothschild or Rockefeller family or DuPont or whatever. It's, you got to have some personal introduction.
You remember, Gary, we're managing their money or finding opportunities for them. We're not the families. We're paid to get an appropriate return for the risks that we're taking. So obviously we want to see as much as we can. And in many, just a decade ago, nobody knew who a family office was, and it's not covered properly by the main desks on Wall Street and the investment banks. So we were treated by like a retail broker that anybody would call up to offer products to, when in fact, given the capital we're mentioning, we should be going directly into the investment banks desks for trading desks for the best deal flow. But that hasn't been the case up until more recently. So, and again, I'll just mention we're like anybody else.
Peter,
I want to have a beer with somebody. I want them to go out and have a barbecue with my family. Every person, Gary, comes to my house, meets my wife, hangs out with the kids, because that's the only way that we're going to have a true relationship. As you know, it would have been a year ago now. I would have gotten on a plane and given you a hug a while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great having you here and coming to see you. But the world's changed a little bit, Peter, hasn't it?
It has.
So no, I agree with you. And so what do you see in terms of, I speak to family offices in Germany, actually all over the world now. And the situation is so in terms of, and I say AI and quantum because they talk to me a lot about it and they're interested. They haven't, and they're starting to commit funds to it, but they're really interested. What do you think about that? What do you think about AI and quantum and some of these emerging technologies? And more important, if somebody puts in front of you incredibly high growth startup that's in a particular vector, right? Let's say artificial intelligence and supply chain, but really hot. What do you do? How does it work? So, and let's just say somebody presents one to you. What would you do with it and how would it work? If it isn't a fit for you, what would you do?
Right. Well, first of all, in our family office, Pear separately is obviously quite interested in emerging technologies and other stuff because obviously he's a founding astronaut of Virgin Galactic and he's very interested in space ever since he was a little kid. He's also very interested in the deep sea. And thus technology is wrapped around that. So, the founding partner has to have some type of significant interest. For the most part, for our multifamily office, which is our partner family office, which is the multi-billion-dollar family office separate from Pear, they're more nuts and bolts. Their core is real estate investment. So, a hot new technology is probably not going to fit with them. Mm-hmm. However, again, because it is that like little small Squire club, the first thing I'm going to do is get presented of something like that. I'm going to figure out which is the right family offices that I can present it to. That I know that I can introduce you to, Gary, if it came from you, so that they could benefit. Because I don't look at it from a quid pro quo type of scenario. I've introduced you to this, give me something else. It's from the longer term. You develop that relationship, okay? It's going to come back to you. It's like giving and philanthropic activities. You're not getting anything today, but over time, whether that's a feeling of confidence, sense of well-being, it's the same thing. Happy to share that information and hopefully other families will benefit from it. And the capital that is made on that AI or technology hopefully goes back into some type of philanthropic venture, whether it was something having to do with impact investing, diversity and inclusion, et cetera, particularly in this day and age when it's becoming so more and more important.
Yeah, I mean, Bill was saying the same thing. So Admiral Owens was saying the same thing. The companies should actually, take some of their money that they have and some of their profit and put it over for, to make a little bit of dent in the universe. And I think it's critically important, actually. And my how's the world changed in the last year with COVID. And I know you went through some episodes a couple of months ago, right? It's the world has changed dramatically. And I think, we've come back to understand the simple things in life, happiness. I know bicycle sales are up through the roof because people are spending time with their family, board games. We understand that there's, some of the simple things, simple pleasures are really important today. So it's interesting how that shifted.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned is in terms of companies giving back, okay? And obviously how important that is. And Admiral Owens mentioned it. And clearly one of the things that I admire most about you, Gary, is through this venue and others, your company always looking to give back. And I think that's important. You have to understand, though, the difference between a asset manager family office, a company that's publicly owned versus a private company. Publicly owned companies have their shareholders to address. So, you're not investing in a company for philanthropic activity. Pear's written a couple books, including The Green Bubble, about investing in green. There needs to be an adequate return for the risk that you're taking. Okay, but I do believe companies need to give back, and in particularly, they need to be good corporate citizens, just as has been more and more important over the last year. But I think it's more than the company being doing it. We have to practice that in our own individual home life. And if you don't practice it, what is a company? A company is just made up of a bunch of human beings that come in the morning and leave. Now, these days it's over Zoom, okay? But that's basically the corporate company and the corporate culture. So if it doesn't permeate down to the lowest person in that particular company, what sense of corporate culture there is. So, one of the books that I read recently was by a woman named Ruth King, and I know you've heard me say it over and over again. It's Mindful of Race. It's putting yourself in the shoes as a white person growing up in privilege, let's say, the African-American person next door to you, and really putting yourself in their shoes. It's a whole different view. If everybody took the time to do that, I think we would have a lot better view of tolerance and inclusiveness than we otherwise do, and a lot more of empathy. And I don't know how that changes overnight, particularly when we're in a COVID situation. People don't have jobs, and people are going to blame others for it. But all I can hope is that we have a new administration, and they could work on that. And I don't put a lot of hope into it, because you can't put government. Everybody's saying, "Oh, the Biden administration, they got the House, they got the Senate." I'm here in London looking outwards in. Okay, I know the history. It's got to start in the home. And if it doesn't start and resonate with you individually, like what you're doing with your company, Gary, the government's not going to be able to be helpful. End of story.
I mean, we're all trying to make a little dent in the universe, and to bring people together. And I last week I did 19 panels around the world, and it's so interesting meeting people and talking to them about their lives and their startups and their AI and their quantum and everything else. And Pear's right on target. The one thing is to do the right thing. The other thing is to get people engaged in it, to make sure that it's not just entitlement. There actually some opportunity to do business together, because it'll keep it running forward. And it's just,
there's nothing we could do, Jerry, if we have these just talks, but it's not followed up with afterwards, where you're basically hitting me over the head. So Peter, after our call, what are you guys doing? I mean, it's the follow through, not just the follow up. And I think that's very important, the follow through.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what kind of things, so I have a wide audience around the world now. What kind of things are you looking for, and how can the audience that's out there, we have investors, we have startups, we have family offices that watch a show. What kind of things are you looking for that they might be able to bring to you, or you may be looking from them?
Right. So in terms of the family office that we're focused on, so we're a multi-billion-dollar multifamily office. So first of all, what the hell does that all mean? A multifamily office. That means we have several families came together to pool their capital, to have a bigger impact. So you have one family with $1 billion, and you have 5 families with $1 billion, you've got $5 billion. If one family's got 10 billion, the other's got 5 billion, you put more together, bigger is better, leads to economies of scales in anything, including the company. So we're a multifamily office with a multi-billion-dollar balance sheet. We're able to obviously be as big as some of the larger asset managers out there, like the Fortresses of the world. So what are we looking to do? Because we have only, I would say, a small quantum of people, but almost unlimited capital, we have to be very clear on what we are looking to invest our capital in. So bigger is better. So 150 million to several billion is kind of our sweet spot. And that doesn't mean I need a project for somebody to show me that's 150 million. It just means that I like more opportunities that could grow. I want to help your viewers grow their business. So if somebody's got an idea for 5 or 10 million, okay, let me take a look at that and see how over the next several years we can grow that into several hundred million. We want to be alongside for the journey. We're passive investors as a family office. We're not a credit fund or private equity. We're not looking to instill control. We're not looking for multiple board seats. We're not hoping that you all go tits up so that we could then, if I could say that, so we can take over your company and force management out. No. We want the operators and managers to do what you do best. We want to be behind the scenes, providing you with the capital to do what you do. Our core business is real estate. Okay. At the end of the day, that's where we provide our largest facilities. Since the lockdown, as you know, Gary, I probably did term sheets and engagements. That's not meaning I allocated capital, but probably over 50 billion. I mean over 5 billion. All of a sudden zeros mean something, so for over 5 billion.
50 billion? That's
5 billion. 5 billion is still a lot. My wife's upstairs, she comes down with the little kids. You're talking about billions and trillions. Why don't you just make $10 today so I can pay for the the groceries, so it all comes down to reality at some point, but it's 5 billion in the last 9 months or so. So real estate, alternative energy, that could be biomass, that could be alternative other resources. Will I look at technology? Sure. Pairs and advocates. So we're looking at, new telecommunications technologies, new satellite technologies, looking at new sonar technologies underwater to, get a better understanding of the world and the sea that we live in. So looking for everything. And if it doesn't fit in terms of our family office, happy to introduce you to other family offices that would be helpful. That's one. If I come across deals, that makes sense, happy to show it to you and your audience. To me, look, just call me up. WhatsApp, I'm on WhatsApp. You have my numbers, Gary. Give it to your audience. Happy to have a conversation. Happy to serve as a mentor. Happy to go through the trials and tribulations. At the end of the day, that's what it's supposed to be about. If you can't spend the time and be humbled enough to help another achieve their own success and achieve their dream, then what are you here for? And I mean that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I got some people that I just got some comments here. It's one thing is, Peter, what is your advice for finance students who want to take a career in the investment management industry? A student wrote and wants to ask you a question.
Oh, so I have 3 boys that are 2 just graduated college, and I'm going to just tell you the reality of the situation because it goes back to my thing. Remember, all I wanted to do was work on Wall Street, right? Because it had the hottest technology and everything. I told my 2 sons not to go into investment banking or Wall Street. I told them to go into technology, study management information systems, informatics, computer science. Even if you don't want to go into that, have some basic background in it. And guess what? In the middle of the pandemic, I have one of my sons, I have twin boys, okay? One went to Indiana University, great university, but not a top student, okay? He's getting job offers from every big consulting company, every major technology company, okay? Because he's got that background. My other son, top graduate of Dartmouth, top of his class, went there on merit scholarships. Every Ivy League school wanted him. Took more of a liberal arts degree in economics, okay? Has offers from all the Wall Street firms, but doesn't want to do that. Wants to do technology or some type of impact investing. Can't find a job. So my first thing is, if you're going to want to go in investment management, family office, first of all, to get to a family office, you really need to be in investment banking for a while or be an analyst. My humble advice would be to do something in technology in terms of learn computers, have a fundamental background in computer science, AI, nanotechnology, whatever the new hottest thing is there. You don't have to be the best at it because you'll be surrounded with people with that. Also, learn how to read a balance sheet income statement. Take an accounting class. Take some business classes. Understand economics, okay? Economics drives everything, the fundamental theory. So economics, statistics class, computer science. Understand those basics. Be a well-rounded person, and I think the world will be your oyster. But at the end of the day, my biggest advice is don't be the first one to sit in the front of the class raising your hand, okay? Nobody likes those people. You want to be the person that is the team player, okay, that wants to work among everybody. The no asshole factor should start at the beginning of your life.
I love that.
Friend to everybody. Everyone will be a friend to you. Help other people, not because you're looking to get something out of it, and they'll come back to you tenfold. That's the most important advice. I know that's a bit opaque, but it's true. Take a round. That's it.
You got another one. One of the viewers is with the Benefit Corporation focused on the Pacific Islands, a nation, and is focused on energy independence across 22 Pacific Islands, and they're hoping to make a difference. So they were just impressed with what we had to say, Peter, and the approach. So I just want to tell you that There's
Well, no, I appreciate it. Look, I'm in the Pacific Islands. I've looked at a number of things in the Caribbean. My wife's from Venezuela, so I know the Latin America struggles. I've done alternative energy and others for many years. I've looked at investing in infrastructure alongside some big pensions and sovereign wealth funds in terms of water infiltration systems. Admiral Owens was talking, Gary, about a technology in terms of bringing fiber to the homes in developing countries. I'm working actually with a family office right now. You could ask me about this offline. That wants to bring Wi-Fi mesh to Hanoi, all throughout India, etc., other developing countries where they don't have the access of, as we do, to 5G technology on their phones. So they want to have Wi-Fi hotspots at the top of old line telephone poles and others around little very rural villages. I think it's all that type of stuff is extremely important, and we're a big proponent of it, and how our capital could be helpful is very important. And so, Gary, I'd love to introduce you to the family office that's actually doing that right now. It happens to be John Paul DiGiorio, which is the founder of Paul Mitchell Hair Products, has a venture that's focused on providing Wi-Fi mesh around the world. And so happy to introduce you to.
No, I would love it. I love it. You got a good, you got another comment here. It says, love that. Help without expectation of return. They love what you have to say, Peter.
Thanks. No, it's true. I mean, look, I've gone to stuff with millions in the bank to my wife couldn't buy diapers for my kid. And I'm not talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about recently. It all, money's here, money's gone. But what is always here is family, community, having a sense of community, taking care of those that are closest to you and your friends and their friends. That reward in here comes back to you 100-fold.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, Peter.
And by the way, Gary, I'm not making that shit up. Okay. You could read. There's lots of stories that I put on my website, peterplaut.com. There's a lot of articles about my trials and tribulations online. You could read about. So it's out there. Sometimes my parents are like, what are you talking about? Your failures and stuff. Because I think that's the only way to really get it out there so people understand where you are and where you've been and where you hope to go.
Sometimes when you go down, you appreciate going up a lot more. It definitely you appreciate it. So it's I know it. They just said that when you help without expectation of return in the Pacific Islands, it's called ohana. So ohana to you. So, Peter, we're coming to the top of the hour. And what are your closing remarks and comments, and how do people get a hold of you?
So, look, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a website, peterplaut.com. I'm at Weimer Family Office, which is there's a WFO.am you could find me on. Gary's got all my details. I encourage you to reach out. Ask Gary for my mobile number. I'm on WhatsApp. I usually work 24/7 because I've got 3 little babies under 3 beyond my 3 boys. So they're always up at night. So I'm usually always available. My ending thoughts would be is, it's true, give back without expectations. And that to me is extremely important. What's also important is my motto. And I live my life every day by this. Success is determined by the individual. What is success to you? If it's monetary rewards, great. Go after that goal. Okay. If it's losing weight, go after that goal. If it's being nice to your wife or your other partner, go after that goal. But whatever that success is that's important to you, have a passion for that, and everything else will fall into place.
No, I agree with you. And happiness is the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be. Look, I wake up every day, whether, like I said, when there's times when they didn't have a dime in the bank, whatever, I woke up, today's another day, and I had a big smile on my face. My ex-wife's like, why are you happy today? Because I'm healthy. My kids are a blessing, etc. Money comes, money goes. So, fuck you. And she's no longer with me because of that. So, seriously, you've got to surround yourself with, people that are not necessarily positive influences as much, but, people that feel that they are blessed for what they have and then are passionate about what they're doing to make themselves better, more responsible global citizens. And hopefully, and it doesn't start with, I have to do something really big. Smile at the person in the supermarket that looks like they're having a bad day, say hello. Okay, that'll change that person's life for that day because you don't know what they're going through.
Well, I
And
remember Bear said he was in Monaco or Monte Carlo when he came up to the taxi, and he wanted to get a taxi, and it was raining, and it happened to be the guy from, you probably put the deal together, the Italian real estate person, and he just, could have gotten into an argument, and he said, I'm sorry, it's raining out, et cetera. And the guy offered him a ride in the cab, and then Pear ended up buying 51% of the company.
So Pear basically took a 5-minute cab ride in the middle of the rain with his partner and I guess this Italian gentleman's partner. They went around the block, went around the block, went around the block, and Pear wound up buying a what we call the Weimer Pisa outlet mall, which will be probably developed over the next 3 years. So when you go out to look at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, there's nothing else there. So his view is he's a contrarian. You can go now next door and buy clothes at a discount, fashion clothes at a discount when retail comes back. We'll see if it does come back or whatever shape or form. But, that cab ride resulted, his generosity in sharing a cab led him to do a big deal that we're all working on now. So you never know where things falls in place. Look, when I came to London, with my wife from Venezuela, she was pregnant. I came to London because I had permanent residency here, but my wife couldn't get a green card, even though I'm a U.S. citizen, as quickly as needed, and I needed to get her out of Venezuela. So I came here, no job, nothing, although I have a great background and, etc. I called up Pear, my old friend. I said, Pear, I need a job. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll find something to do. Put me in the seat, and, the rest is history. So, and it's those relationships that you have that could be 20 years ago. You might find an old friend on Facebook. You never know what each day has in store for you. Treat people right. Treat them with respect. Say hello to the person in the supermarket you walk by with, and maybe you get into a cab like Pear did, and changes that gentleman's life. Maybe changes Pear's a little bit. Who knows? But we're all doing great things here at our family office, and if I could be helpful to anybody on your program, just really, I mean that. Reach out to me.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in today to GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And it's great to have Peter, and Admiral Owens was on earlier today. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for next week. There'll be another show. Appreciate your time. And as they say from the Pacific Islands, Ohana Mahalo. Thank you very much, Peter. Take care.